Now, moving on to chapter 5, which is biodiversity. Now, biodiversity is a term used to describe enormous variety of life on Earth. It is a measure of variations at genetic, species, and ecosystem level. Now, terrestrial biodiversity is usually greater near the equator, which is the result of the warm climate and high primary productivity. Mountains have high range of species at low altitude as they can support larger number of species due to climatic conditions. Moving on to, there are three levels of biodiversity, that is genetic biodiversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Now, genetic diversity is concerned with the variability of genes with a particular species. Genetic diversity allows species to adapt to changing environments and survive drastic changes. This ensures survival of the population. Now, species diversity refers to the variety of organisms on Earth. Ecosystem diversity, it refers to the different types of habitats like grassland, deserts, and mangroves, etc. Moving on, biodiversity is measured using species richness. Now, species richness is the number of different species represented in an ecological community, landscape, or region. Now, there are three types of biodiversity. It is alpha diversity, beta diversity, and gamma diversity. Alpha diversity refers to the diversity within a particular area or ecosystem. Beta diversity refers to the comparison of diversity between ecosystems. Gamma diversity is a measure of overall diversity for the different ecosystems within a region. Now, for biodiversity services, we have protection of water resources, pollution breakdown and recycling of waste, pollination of crops, prevention of soil erosion, food, medicinal resource, wood products, etc., research and education, tourism, cultural values, and soil formation. Moving on to threats to the biodiversity, we have natural causes and man-made causes. Now, for the threats, natural threats, we have floods, earthquakes, landslides, volcanoes, etc. And for man-made causes, we have hunting and poaching, global warming, deforestation and habit fragmentation, unsustainable agriculture, and invasive alien species. Now, as per World Wildlife Fund's Living Planet report, species extinction rate is 100 to 1000 times higher than a few hundred years ago. There are several constraints in biodiversity conservation, like low priority for conservation in policies, exploitation of biodiversity for monetary gains, limited knowledge regarding the biodiversity and its importance, unplanned urbanization resulting in destruction of wetlands, deforestation, etc. Now, considering the threats to biodiversity, there are two modes of conservation of the same, that is in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. Now, in situ conservation aims to enable biodiversity to maintain itself within the natural habitat in which it is found. Examples would be national parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, reserve forests, and protected forests. Ex situ conservation aims at conserving biodiversity outside the area where they naturally occur. Examples would be seed banks and botanical gardens. Now, reintroduction of genetic gharials, Gangetic gharials in Chambal River flowing through Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh, where it has become extinct, is an example of ex situ conservation. Now, a botanic garden is a garden dedicated to the collection, cultivation, preservation, and display of a wide range of plants labeled with their botanical names. Now, it is an ex situ mode of conservation. Zoo is an establishment where stationary or mobile, where captive animals are kept for exhibition to public and includes a circus, rescue center, but does not include an establishment of a licensed dealer in captive animals. It is an ex situ mode of conservation. Now, moving on to Indian biodiversity, with just 2.4% of the land area, India accounts for nearly 7% of the recorded species. Now, the varied climatic, edaphic, and topographic conditions have resulted in a wide array of ecosystems and habitats in India with enormous biodiversity. Now, moving on to landscape biodiversity, it is a mosaic of heterogeneous landforms, vegetation types, and land use. Now, landscape biodiversity in India, we have 2 realms, 5 biomes, 10 biogeographic zones, and 25 biogeographic provinces. Now, realm is a continent or subcontinent sized area with unifying features of geography, flora, and fauna. In the Indian regions, there are 2 realms. The Himalayan region represents the Palearctic realm, and the rest of the subcontinent represented by Malayan realm. Moving on to biome, a biome is a collection of plants and animals that have common characteristics for the environment they exist in. They can be found over a range of continents. The 5 biomes of India are tropical humid forest, tropical dry or deciduous forest, warm deserts or cold semi-deserts, coniferous forests, and alpine meadows. Now, biogeographic zones. Biogeography deals with the geographical distribution of plants and animals. The Himalayan range is very rich in species diversity due to the confluence of different biogeographical zones. Now, moving on to the different biogeographical province zones, it is the Trans-Himalayan zone. It would include the Himalayan Ladakh Mountains, Himalayan Tibetan Plateau, and Trans-Himalayan Sikkim region. This will be included in the Trans-Himalayan zone. The Himalayas would include the Himalayan Northwest Himalaya, the Western Himalaya, the Central Himalaya, and the Eastern Himalaya. In the Indian deserts, we have two deserts, which are the deserts of Kutch and Thar. For semi-arid regions, we have the semi-arid regions of the Punjab Plains and Gujarat Rajputanas. Western Ghats would include the Malabar Plains and the Western Ghat Mountains. For the Deccan Peninsula, we'll have Deccan Peninsular Central Highlands, the Chota Nagpur region, the Eastern Highlands, and the Central Plateau and the Deccan South. Gangetic Plains would include the Upper Gangetic Plain and the Lower Gangetic Plain. The coasts would include the East Coast, West Coast, and the Lakshadweeps. Now moving on to Northeast India. Northeast India would have two different regions. That would be the Brahmaputra Valley and the Northeast Hills. So biogeographic province is an ecosystematic or biotic subdivision of the realms. Now moving on to fauna. India accounts for about 6.45% of the faunal species known worldwide. Now classification of the animal kingdom would be in two different families, which is vertebrates and invertebrates. Invertebrates would not have a central backbone, and vertebrates would have a backbone. It would include fishes, amphibians, reptiles. All the three are cold-blooded, birds, mammals. Now, mammals would be of three different types. That would be marsupial, and two other types, which is egg-laying, and in invertebrates, we'll have annelidas, molluscus, arthropods, arachnids, echinoderms, and protozoa. Now, moving on to vertebrates, these are animals with backbones and spinal column. Some of the examples would be groundhog, amphibians, fishes, birds, reptiles, etc. Now, basic fact would be that fishes and reptiles are cold-blooded. Amphibians are cold-blooded animals. They live in both land and water and breathe with their lungs and gills. Now, birds and mammals are warm-blooded. Moving on to invertebrates, these animals do not have backbone. More than 98% of the animal species in the world are invertebrates. Now, invertebrates would include protozoa, annelida, molluscus, crustacean, arachnids, insects, and echinoderms. Now, annelids would include those organisms which have their bodies divided into segments and they do not have limbs. Example would be earthworm. For molluscus, they have a soft skin-lined organ covered with hard shell on the outside. Examples would be octopus, squid, and oysters. Echinoderms are those organisms whose bodies are covered in spikes or spine. They live in water. Examples would be sea star, sea urchin, etc. Now, protozoas are the smallest of all animals. They are simple single-celled animals. Examples would be amoeba and flagellates. Arthropods are those organisms which have limbs with joints that allow them to move. They also have an exoskeleton. Crustacean, insects, arachnids are example of arthropoda. Now, crustaceans are those organisms which have a hard external shell protecting their body. Examples would be crab and lobster. Insects are those that have 3 body parts and 6 legs and an antenna. Examples would be beetles, butterfly, and bee. Now, arachnids are those organisms that have 2 body parts and 4 pairs of legs. They do not have an antenna. So the difference between insect and arachnids would be the presence of antenna and absence of antenna. Now, examples of arachnids would be spider, scorpion, tick, mites, etc. Now, moving on to the floral diversity, India represents about 11% of the world's known floral diversity. The plant kingdom is basically divided into 2 branches, that is cryptogamy and phanerogamy. That is those plants which have flowering and seed bearing capacity, and cryptogamy will be those plants that do not have flowering and seed bearing capacities. Now, cryptogamy will have 3 different types, that is thallophyta, bryophyta, and petridophyta. Thallophytas, in which plant body do not differentiate into root, leaves, and stem. Bryophyta, they have false roots and leaves. Spores are produced in the capsule. Example would be Riccia and Funaria. Now, petridophyta would be true roots and leaves are present, but spores borne on the surface, under the surface. Examples would be leaves, ferns, example. Now, thallophytas could be algae, fungi, or lichens. Now, algae are those autotrophic, that means they contain chlorophyll. Examples would be Spirogyra. Fungi can be parasitic or saprophytic. They are non-green and do not have chlorophylls. Examples would be mushroom and pendulum. Now, phanerogamy will include gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms are those plants that have naked seeds, and angiosperms that have seeds in a fruit. Examples would be monocot and dicot. Monocots are those that have 1 seeded leaf, and the dicots are 2 seeded leaves. Examples would be pea and mango. The 1 seeded leaves examples would be rice and wheat. Now, moving on to the National Gene Bank at National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, New Delhi, is a nodal organization in India for management of plant genetic resources. Now, moving on to the floral diversity, biodiversity of India. Himalayan mountain system, peninsular Indian subregion, tropical rainforest, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now, for the Himalayan mountain system, floras include evergreen and semi-evergreen forests like rhododendrons, oak, pine, juniper, lichens, moses, etc. For the peninsular Indian subregion, it includes peninsular India as well as the desert region of Rajasthan, that is the Thar Desert. Now, peninsular India has tropical moist deciduous to tropical dry deciduous scrub vegetations like sal in the northern region, teak in the southern region. Now, Western Ghats have evergreen vegetation threatened with deforestation, unchecked urbanization, and invasive species. Gadgil Committee and Kasturi Rangan Committee were formed to recommend sustainable development of Western Ghat region. Now, Indian desert of Rajasthan has floral like cacti and other succulents. Now, tropical rainforest region are distributed in the Western Ghat region and northeast India. Evergreen vegetation like ebony tree is found here. Epiphytes and orchids are also found in this region. Stratification in rainforest is very distinct with multiple horizontal layers of trees. Now, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, tropical rainforest species are found in this region like Terminalia. Now, some pointers for prelims would include mycorrhizae are symbiotic relationships that are found between fungi and plants. The fungi colonize the root system of the host plant, providing increased water and nutrient absorption capability, while the plant provides the fungus with carbohydrates formed from photosynthesis. Now, sandal tree is a partial root parasite, meaning that while it manufactures its own food, it also depends on hosts like other partial parasites for water and mineral nutrients. Moving on to some basic facts. Effect of intensity of light on the growth of plant. High light intensity favors plant growth, while low intensity retards growth, flowering, and fruiting. Out of 7 colors in the visible spectrum, only red is effective in photosynthesis. Plant grow in blue light is small, while red light causes elongation of cells resulting in etiolation. Now, plants grown in UV and violet lights are dwarf. Frost can lead to killing of young plants due to damage to cells and formation of cankers. Now, snow results in mechanical bending of tree. However, it can also act as a blanket and prevent further drop in temperature, thus protecting seedlings from excessive cold and frost. Now, excessive temperature disrupts the balance between respiration and photosynthesis, thereby causing depletion on food. It also increases susceptibility to bacterial and fungal attack. Further, there is a desiccation of plant tissues and loss of moisture. Dieback phenomena in trees like sal, wherein there is a progressive dying, usually backwards from the tip of any portion of the plant. Reasons for this may include frost, drought, grazing, dense overhead canopy. Now, moving on to insectivorous plants, they specialize in trapping insects. They have several attractions to lure insects like bright colors and sweet secretions. They hunt for insects despite having normal roots, as they are usually found in nutrient-poor soils. As a result, they have to hunt in order to replenish themselves. Now, some of the insectivorous plants found in India are sundew, aldrovanda, that is pitcher plant, and few others. Insectivorous plants have great medicinal properties like treating cholera, urinary tract infections, blisters. Some are also capable of curdling milk. Now, invasive alien species are species whose introduction or spread outside their natural past or present distribution threatens biological diversity. Now, some invasive fauna found in India are crazy ant, giant African snail, myna, goldfish, pigeon, etc. Likewise, invasive flora of India includes Prospis juliflora, water hyacinthia, lantana camara, toddy palm, black mimosa, black wattle. Now, some medicinal plants of India are kuth, used for anti-inflammatory drug as well as making perfumes. Ladies' slipper orchid, used to treat insomnia and anxiety. Sarpagandha is used for treating various central nervous system disorders. Now, moving on to IUCN Red Data Book. IUCN Red Data Book contains the complete list of threatened species, including both plant and animal. The pink pages in this book include critically endangered species. Green pages are used for species that were formerly endangered but have now recovered to a point where they are no longer threatened. Now, the classification according to IUCN is the basic classification is not evaluated and evaluated. For evaluated, we have adequate data or data deficient species. For those species that we have adequate data for are classified as extinct, extant in the wild, critically endangered, endangered, vulnerable, near threatened, and least concern. Now, this would be the criteria used by 5 criteria that are A to E, used by IUCN to categorize the species into critically endangered, endangered, or vulnerable. Criteria would include population size reduction, geographical range, small population size and decline, very small or restricted population, and quantitative analysis. Now, IUCN Species Survival Commission is a science-based network of more than 7,500 volunteer experts from almost every country of the world. Now, moving on to the Scheduled Animal of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Wildlife Protection Act consists of 6 schedules, which have now been modified to 4 schedules in 2022, giving varying degree of protections against poaching, smuggling, illegal trade of animals listed from Schedule 1 to Schedule 4. Now, these schedules are updated, and it should be read from the updated point of view. And now they have only 4 schedules. Schedule 1 and 2 have animals with varying degrees. Schedule 1 are those animals which have greater degree of protection. Schedule 2 are those animals which have lesser degree of protection. In Schedule 3, we have the protected plants. In Schedule 4, we have those species that are falling under the CITES provision. All right. So the new Schedule 4 will include all those species which are in the CITES appendices, and thus making the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 CITES compliant. Now, these are some of the species that are endangered in India or are placed in some of the schedules of Wildlife Protection Act. And these are the ranges. These are the names of the animals. Now, moving on to some pointers for prelims, we have Irrawaddy dolphins, which are listed in the Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now, they are found in large numbers in Chilka Lake. Now, Chinar Wildlife Sanctuary, Kerala is the only rehabilitation center for star tortoise in the country. Great Indian Bustard, known as Godwan in Rajasthan, are the highest of all flying birds found in arid and semi-arid grasslands. It is the state bird of Rajasthan listed under Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act and CMS or Bonn Convention, that is Convention on Migratory Species. It is endemic to Indian subcontinent and is found only in 6 states, that is MP, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan and Karnataka. Now, Amur falcon is a migratory bird that stays every year at Doyang Lake, which is in Nagaland, during their flight from Mongolia to South Africa. Now, Nilgiri Thar is the state animal of Tamil Nadu, listed under Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. It is endemic to Western Ghats. Now, majority of Nilgiri Thar are found in Eraviculam National Park in Munnar, Kerala. Now, Asiatic lion is listed under Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act and Appendix 1 of CITES and is found in India only. Several Asiatic lions died due to canine distemper virus and tick-borne babiosis in Gir Forest, Gujarat. Considering this, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has launched the Asiatic Lion Conservation Project under the centrally sponsored scheme Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitat, CSS IDWH. There was also a proposal to translocate lions from Gujarat to Kuno Palpur Wildlife Sanctuary, Madhya Pradesh. Now, moving on to spider monkey, they are found in Central and South America. They are also so called because they look like spiders hanging upside down from their tails with their arms and legs dangling. Now, Sarus crane is the state bird of UP and has been classified vulnerable by IUCN. It generally inhabits natural wetlands. They are large, non-migratory cranes and India's only resident breeding cranes and world's tallest flying bird. Now, Tamil yeoman is a butterfly species endemic to Western Ghats and has been declared as the state butterfly of Tamil Nadu, while Maharashtra declared blue mormon as its state butterfly. Now, moving on to Kharai camels. They are found in the Kutch region of Gujarat and can swim up to 3 kilometers in seas in search of mangroves. Many Jat families in the region are traditional rearers of Kharai camels. Now, moving on to purple frog. It is listed as endangered in IUCN. It is endemic to Western Ghat and can be called as a living fossil, as its evolutionary roots suggest it could have shared space with dinosaur. Now, orangutans are one of the world's 3 surviving species of great apes and are native to the Indonesia and Malaysia. It has been classified as critically endangered by IUCN. Chinkara gazelles have been classified as least concern by IUCN. Karnataka has notified Bukkupatna Chinkara Wildlife Sanctuary as the southernmost tip in the distribution range of Chinkara in India. Now, flame-throated bulbul is the state bird of Goa and is endemic to the southern peninsular region. Now, pangolins are the most trafficked wildlife species. They are known as scaly anteaters and are toothless animals. They are the only mammals wholly covered in scales. The humpback mahseer, found in the waters of Kaveri, has been added to the IUCN Red List as critically endangered. They are found in Kaveri and they have a hump in back. Now, moving on to gangetic dolphins, they are also known as Susu, is the national aquatic animal and has been granted non-human personhood status by the government. It is also called blind dolphins. It is listed under Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. It is among the 4 freshwater dolphins found in the world. Its population is declining due to poaching, construction of dams, getting trapped in fishing nets, and agricultural runoff from fields. Now, Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary in Bihar is India's only sanctuary for Gangetic dolphins. Moving on to Indus dolphins, they are also known as Bhulan, are endangered freshwater and functionally blind species of dolphin. A very small population is found in Bias River. Punjab has recently declared it as its state animal. Indus dolphins rely on echolocation to navigate, communicate, and hunt down their prey. Now, India is home to 9 species of vulture. Some of the important ones facing extinction include the critically endangered species are slender-billed vulture, Indian long-billed vulture, Oriental white-backed vulture, and red-headed vulture, which is the mafia of vultures. Now, endangered species include Egyptian vulture. According to the Vulture Care Center, which was set at Pinjore, Haryana, later it was upgraded to become the first vulture that is Jatayu Conservation and Breeding Center in India. State of India Bird 2020 report. The State of India Bird 2020 report was released at the ongoing United Nations 13th Conference of Parties to the Convention on Migratory Species in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. Now, the key findings include that 867 species of Indian birds assessed in this report. 52% of the species saw clear decline over the past decade. 101 species classified as high conservation concerns, such as rufous-fronted piranha, Nilgiri thurus, Nilgiri pipit, and Indian vulture. The number of Indian peacock has increased dramatically over the past few decades. The number of house sparrows has decreased in large cities, but it is roughly stable across the country. All these 4 species of bustards in India, that is the Great Indian Bustard, McQueen's bustard, Lesser Florican, and Bengal Florican, have suffered continuous decline in population. Important bird area is an area identified by BirdLife International as being globally important for conservation of bird population. Sites under important bird area do not ensure that it gets legal protection or becomes inaccessible to people. So they serve basically an educational purpose. Now, moving on to Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History is registered as a society, and Union Environment Minister is its president. Now, draft visionary prospective plan to conserve birds has been placed in the public domain. Key highlights of the plan include bird survey will be conducted in selected landscapes. Species recovery program of critically endangered birds is envisaged. Aims at conservation of migratory birds. SACON will be the nodal institute for this purpose. That is Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History will be the nodal institution. Now, thousands of migratory birds recently died at Sambar Lake in Rajasthan due to avian botulism. Avian botulism is caused by Clostridium botulism bacteria, which affects the nervous system of birds, leading to paralysis. Now, olive ridley turtles are one of the smallest and most abundant of all sea turtles found in the world. Gharimata Marine Sanctuary, located in Odisha, is known as the world's largest olive ridley rookery. They are known for their mass nesting sites called Arivada. They are carnivorous in nature. Now, Operation Olivia has been launched by Indian Coast Guard to ensure the safety of olive ridley sea turtles. Now, WCCB and UN Environment India launched an awareness campaign, Not All Animals Migrate by Choice, to garner public support for protection and conservation of wildlife, prevention of smuggling, and reduction in demand for wildlife products. Now, integrated development of wildlife habitats is a centrally sponsored scheme where government provides financial and technical assistance to state government for wildlife conservation. The scheme has following components: support to protected areas like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, protection of wildlife outside protected areas, recovery program for saving critically endangered species and habitats. It covers 17 species, some of which are snow leopard, bustards, including floricans, dolphins, angol, Nilgiri thar, dugong, Manipur brow antler, Malabar civet, Indian rhinoceros, Asiatic lion, swamp deer, Jordan crouser, etc. Now, moving on to the animal diversity of India, the critically endangered species, endangered mammals would include Andaman white shrewd Jenkins, Andaman shrew, endemic to India. Now, these Andaman rooted shrews, they are endemic to India and found in Mount Harriet in the South Andaman. Kashmir stag or angul, state animal of Jammu and Kashmir, and also known as red deer. Large rock rats or LVR rats, known only from eastern Ghats of Tamil Nadu. Now, Namdapha flying squirrels found in Namdapha National Park, Arunachal Pradesh. Malabar civet found exclusively in Western Ghats, Malabar civets. Now moving on to the endangered mammals, we have some, these were the critically endangered mammals. Now we have the endangered mammals. Endangered mammals would include pygmy hawk and Kondana rat. Now pygmy hawk is world's smallest wild pig and is the most useful indicator of grassland habitat. It was reintroduced in Sonai Rupai, Assam. Its population is restricted to Manas Wildlife Sanctuary. So pygmy hawks are exclusively found in Manas Wildlife Sanctuary. Now moving on to Kondana rats, it is a nocturnal burrowing rodent found only in India. Its population is restricted to Singar Plateau near Pune in Maharashtra. Now moving on to critically endangered marine biodiversity, we have fishes, corals, amphibians and reptiles. Now in fishes, these are the critically endangered marine biodiversity. So in fishes, we have the Pondicherry sharks, Ganges shark, Ganga shark, large toothed sawfish, long comb sawfish and narrow snout sawfish. For corals, we have fire corals, which are critically endangered as opposed to orange corals. Orange corals are although similar in name, but fire corals are the ones which are critically endangered. Now amphibians, we have the Annamalai flying frog, Gundia Indian frog and Kerala Indian frog. Tiger toad is also critically endangered. For reptiles, we have gharial, which is critically endangered. Other crocodiles are not. Hawksbill turtle, river terrapin, and Bengal roof turtle. These are critically endangered marine biodiversity. Now moving on to critically endangered birds, we have migratory birds, non-migratory birds, grassland birds, vultures, and others. Now for the migratory birds, we have Siberian cranes found in Keoladau National Park and spoon-billed sandpiper. Non-migratory birds would include the white-billed heron found in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. Grassland birds would include the Bengal florican found in Assam, Arunachal Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. Jordan couser found in Sri Lanka Mahaleshwar Wildlife Sanctuary, very important. Great Indian bustard Gibi and sociable lowwing found in North and Northwest India. Vultures, we have seen different types of vultures already. Others would include the Himalayan quail, pink-headed duck. These are critically endangered birds. Now moving on to critically endangered spiders, we have Rameshwaram oriental or Rameshwaram parachute spiders. We have Guthi tarantula, metallic tarantula or peacock tarantula. Now some of the recent changes to the IUCN status would include the status of forest owlets, whose status has been changed from critically endangered to endangered, which means the conservation efforts for the same are working. It is found only in dry deciduous forest of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. Now Cispara day gecko status has been changed from critically endangered to near threatened. Knife-toothed sawfish status has been changed from critically endangered to endangered. Now duck-billed platypus and some species of anteaters are few exceptions, as despite being mammals, they lay eggs rather than giving birth to young ones. All of them are found in Australia and New Guinea. Now moving on to marine organisms, we have planktons, phytoplanktons, zooplanktons, cirrigrass and seaweeds. So for planktons, it refers to both microscopic plants like algae, that is phytoplanktons, and animals like crustacean and protozoans. They are called zooplanktons, found in all aquatic system except some swift-moving water. So swift-moving water is the exceptions, and that too of certain types. Now locomotory power of planktons is limited and is distributed in largely controlled by water currents. So its distribution is controlled by water currents and they have very low locomotory power. Now moving on to phytoplanktons. Phytoplanktons are autotrophic components of the plankton community and are a key part of the ocean and freshwater ecosystem. All phytoplanktons have chlorophylls and carry out photosynthesis. They also act as carbon sink by removing carbon dioxide naturally during photosynthesis. Now common kind of phytoplanktons are cyanobacteria, protists and green algae. They are present throughout the lighted region of all seas and oceans, including the polar region, and their total biomass is greater than that of total plants on land. However, their distribution is limited to the uppermost layer of the oceans, where light intensity is sufficient for photosynthesis. The highest concentration of phytoplanktons is found at higher altitudes, while the trophics and subtrophics have 10 to 100 times lower concentrations. So higher latitudes have greater phytoplanktons. Moving on to zooplanktons, they are animal components of the plankton community. They are heterotrophic, meaning they cannot produce their own food and must consume instead other plants or animals as food. In particular, this means they eat planktons. Examples of zooplankton would include tiny flagellates and giant jellyfish. Moving on to seagrass, these are marine bioflowering plants that resemble grass in appearance. They grow in shallow coastal waters with sandy or marshy bottoms, require comparatively calm areas. Now, seagrass beds serve various variety variety of purposes like reducing wave energy, filtering sediments and nutrients from water, controlling erosion, and they serve as a habitat for marine fauna. Now, moving on to seaweed, they are microscopic algae, meaning they have no differentiation of true tissues such as roots, stems, leaves. Now, functions of seaweed would include they are important food for humans. They are used as drug for goiter treatment. Commercial products like agar-agar, alginate, iodine can be extracted from them. Biodegradation of seaweeds can produce methane. They serve as an indicator of marine pollution. Other general functions are similar to seagrass. That'll be it.